thank you so much for taking time out just to have a conversation with you. It's a real privilege and an honour to just spend a bit of time with you. Now, we all know that you've resigned as chair of the board, but I want us to get a little bit more from you in terms of you as a person and that experience of the time that you were on the board. So let's just remind ourselves of when you started on the board at YMCA Heart of England.
Well, you told me just now that it was 2007. I couldn't believe it was that long ago, to be honest. But I think it was Mark Brookshaw at the time, who was probably chair, asked me. We got to know each other, and he asked me to join the board. And I remember my very first board meeting actually being completely overawed by all the stuff that people seem to know, all the information about housing, and I sat there thinking, I can't offer anything to this. I know nothing about this. And Mark had brought me on really at the time around helping with the social enterprise side as running my own business. So that's why he brought me on. But I do remember my first board meeting thinking, I can't contribute anything at all. And then over a period of time, you start to realise that, because when you're in your own business, you think very much like a director. So you think you've got to tell people how to run the business, because that's not the role of a trustee at all. So I very quickly realised I didn't need to know about housing particularly, or need to know about support work and things like that. I would learn about that as I went along. It was my perspective, my values, those sorts of things that I was asked to bring, and over a long period of time I gradually got to know a lot more about what was going on. But it's funny now you asked me, I do remember that first board meeting. It was quite scary.
Brilliant. I'm so glad that you remembered that. I mean, I've been CEO now for just over 12 months, but prior to that I came along to the board meeting, and I think I've been at YMCA for nearly 3 years. And so for me, getting to know you, and actually I reported into you, for me it's been a real experience that is something that I won't forget. And the thing for me that makes it so special is that you don't just come with the skills and abilities. The bit that's really important to me is the faith aspect that you bring. So for me, in terms of you being chair, it was really refreshing to have someone who understood that spiritual aspect and how that could inform the work that we did. So as chair, when you were chair, how did that impact some of the decisions that you would make?
I think it's really interesting because we as a board, we have to have a certain number of people as a Christian organisation who are Christians. It don't have to be everybody. And I did have a faith, but my faith actually grew whilst I was on the board. So in 2007 when I joined, I would have been a sort of a non-practicing Christian, really. Brought up as a Christian, but not really practicing. It was actually 2015 when I came back to church fully, and then 2017 when I was baptised and born again. So my faith grew during the time that I was, first of all, a trustee, and then subsequently a chair. And what I always felt about having a faith and being a faith-based organisation, and a Christian-based organisation, it wasn't about evangelising Christianity to people, because that's not what it was about. It was about, and I've always been, my own faith is like this, is you demonstrate your faith through who you are and how you make decisions and how you speak to people and how you behave. So I was really keen to make sure as a board, and we talked about these lenses, which I'll talk about in a second, that we start to look at decisions not just through a financial lens. It's a very important lens that we need to look at, because if we're going to do something that's going to cause the organisation harm, we should not do it. But often I think staff often saw trustees as just making decisions financially, whereas what I encouraged with a member of staff that was working with you at the time, we talked about what I call these three lenses, which was the financial lens that trustees should look through, the social lens, so financial lens is it going to be cost effective and can we afford it? The social lens was what impact will it have? And then the third one was what I called the kingdom lens. Does it expand the kingdom? Now that's not necessarily expanding Christians, it's expanding the Christian faith by demonstrating who we are. So as trustees, we began to look at things and make decisions. Well, that might not actually make sense financially to keep operating that part of the organisation, but it has a social impact, so we will keep it going. Or actually, it hasn't got a massive social impact, but internally we need to do something, the way we manage our staff, because that's about kingdom impact. And kingdom impact for me was about when people engage with YMCA Heart of England, or Birmingham and Coventry as it was, what do they sense from us? If we're just the same as every other corporate organisation, then that Christianity is not permeating into the organisation. So, I mean, that sounds like I've had a massive impact. It was just at board level, at chair level, I wanted to make sure that as trustees, we always prayed at every meeting. And there were times when I said, I think at times in meetings, let's just stop and pray, or let's just trust that God will provide. And I think occasionally that would stop people and go, oh yeah, we are a Christian organisation, we can lean on God a little bit, and we were able to do that as a board as well. So I think someone said when I had my leaving, my final meeting, that he said the two words that he used to describe me, this was Mike, one of the trustees, said the two words that Paul, I remember that you always talked about was kingdom principles. And I think that's hopefully, in terms of a legacy of mine, I hope that stays with the board and the organisation, that at all times we remember we're an organisation led and driven by our kingdom principles. Doesn't always work. We've not always succeeded at that in terms of the staff, I'm sure, but that's what I hope would be my legacy, is that we continue to strive at all times to behave in a kingdom type way to each other within the organisation, to each other at board level. I think even at board to exec level, we try to build those relationships based on respect and kingdom principles. So I've almost forgotten what your question was, but that's my answer to the question.
You're answering it really well, to be honest, Paul. I think one of the things for me, in terms of the experience that I've had and have been really privileged to be part of, is the fact that we talk about the Christian principles and our foundation being built on that. But I remember at board meetings and in terms of interaction with other staff who aren't Christians, they've also had really positive things to say. And I remember one staff member in particular saying she wasn't sure about joining YMCA, but because of how you spoke to her, it made her feel that even though, you know, she may not be a Christian, we were really living out our values in terms of being inclusive for those of faith and none. So for me, whilst we're talking about our Christian principles, one of the things that you've done, you've led the organisation not around just the Christian principles, but you've been inclusive so that those who aren't Christians feel that they can be part and parcel of this
I think maybe that's just me, but my form of Christianity is inclusive. It's not exclusive. It's not saying, well, if you're not a Christian, I'm not going to talk to you, or somehow you're less of a person. To me, the teachings of Jesus are to love everybody. So the fact that people work for us that are not Christians, they should feel just as valued and just as valuable as somebody who is of the Christian faith. That's the whole point to me of almost Christianity, is to embrace those that are not the same as you, rather than thinking there's some like exclusive club that you have to join. No, and I think, you know, whether you're a Muslim, a Hindu, a Sikh, or no faith or any other faith, then I think the whole point about a kingdom principle is you feel welcome when you work for YMCA. And I hope that continues, because that's really important, that's the living out to me of Christianity. It's not just evangelizing isn't just about telling people about Christianity, it's about being Christian. And I think so I really hope that other people and the staff that are not Christians feel just as welcome, just as encouraged as those that do have a Christian faith.
Oh, I'm sure they do. In fact, we know they do, because they've told us that. I think the other thing for me, Paul, is not only have you been an example of what I consider to be someone of integrity, but you've also been an example of someone that has the skills and the abilities of a chair. So you've not been afraid to challenge where challenge is needed to be put, and you've not shied away from making sure that we're moving in the right direction. And that will be something that we will miss, because not only did you, in my view, get the balance right in terms of the Christian principles, the three lenses, but you were also really key to challenge where we needed to be challenged. And what would you say to maybe the next chair that's coming on or is on board at the moment? What kind of pointers would you give to them, if any?
Well, the first pointer I would give is don't try and be like Paul Harris. You know,
Well, you're unique, aren't you? There's only
no,
one
not
Paul
because of
Harris.
that, because they need to do it their own way. And
Yeah.
in the same way as Mark said, he chaired in a certain way. All I did was chair in the way that I thought was right to chair. I didn't read a book on how to chair a YMCA organisation. I just thought, in terms of my experience, and business experience, and leadership experience, it's about making sure that voices are heard, that people feel listened to respectfully. So what I try to do, certainly in chairing a meeting, is it's very easy for people want to talk over each other and all talk at the same time, and people can get quite heated, is to make sure that those that wanted to speak always have the opportunity to speak. So we had, I think by the time we got to the, my final meeting, there was just a general almost habit of we'll just put our hands up if we want to speak, and if I'd not spotted somebody that wanted to make a point, another trustee would say, oh, so and so wants to make a point. It's almost like it's quite a Quakery type principle of the talking stick almost, is that trying to make sure that everyone gets the chance to speak. Now I think that's a principle that should go into all meetings, not just board meetings or trustee meetings. It should be staff meetings where people feel they have the opportunity to speak, and then opinions are respected. So we don't have to agree with each other, and actually sometimes constructive conflict is good because you challenge each other, as long as again it's done respectfully and there's no personal side to that. We can agree with each other, disagree with each other, and still love each other. That's
absolutely
fine, and I think that's what I try to encourage. So from the next chair's perspective, I just would encourage them to continue to make sure that we allow people to speak. We spend time listening, having a listening environment, and that we get the blend right between challenge and encouragement. I think there's no point in having a meeting, particularly at board level, where everyone's just going, well done, it's all marvellous. That's not particularly helpful.
No, it's
in
not.
The same way, it's not, well, why are you doing that? That's wrong. And interfering, I think a good trustee board knows its place in governance terms, not in executive terms. And sometimes new trustees, and even I found that in my first few meetings, was an adaptation from I need to tell you how to run the organisation to that's not our job as trustees. Our job is to make sure that we are following the objectives and the Articles of Association. What we're doing is in line with what we're supposed to be doing. And if you as an executive team are taking us down a different direction, we go, well, that's not in line with our charitable objectives. And then to challenge and encourage those sorts of things. So I just would encourage the next chair to challenge and encourage and keep that balance about right.
That's really, really helpful, because I actually think that getting that balance right is something that we really need to capture and nurture. So it's interesting that you've mentioned those key things. The other thing for me, Paul, is when I decided to come on to the sort of to be a CEO of YMCA Heart of England, it wasn't an easy time. So we were going through lots, including COVID and all the other things that brought with it. But I think what you helped to do was steer the ship whilst we were going through those difficult times. And one of the things that we heard from staff was that they felt supported by you. You spoke to some staff as well, and we had an online conference. And the feedback that we got was they felt confident that the chair was steering the organisation through times when they were feeling a little bit unsure because of COVID, not being able to go into work and so on. How did it feel during that time when we were going through COVID, when we were having the challenges of some people not being able to go into their office as they would like, being leader or part of the leadership as a trustee, moving that organisation through those difficult times?
That's a fascinating question. I think it's got a number of answers to that. One is, if you have a faith, you return to your faith in times of difficulty. So through prayer and trusting in God, we knew that He would help steer us through the organisation. But the honest answer is it's scary, like everybody else. We're still human beings. Just because we're the chair or a trustee or a chief executive, we still get scared. And there were times that we were worried about where the organisation would go. But I think the most important thing as a leader is you stay calm. It's the classic idea of the swan, that looks elegant on the surface while he's pedaling like mad underneath. So we may have been working really hard and having tough decisions to make, But from the staff's perspective and external stakeholders, it's really important that the chair doesn't look like he's panicking. You've got to remain calm. And I think for me, I had absolute faith in you as chief executive and the executive team at the time that you'd be able to steer us through as well. I had faith in God that he would provide the tools and the resources that we needed. And I also had faith in the trustee board that we would make the right decisions, not always easy decisions, sometimes quite difficult decisions that would impact on people's lives. But if you make those decisions prayerfully and carefully, then you're much more likely to come out with a calm, rational decision than if everyone's losing their head and panicking. So I think it's very much about, we remained calm as best as we could during that time. Knowing the sense of responsibility you have as trustees as well, that ultimately, if things do go badly, the trustees are partly responsible for that in terms of strategic direction. So keep calm, keep working, and keep talking to each other. That's the other thing that we did a lot of, I think, around that time, didn't we? We discussed a lot of things. So nobody felt they were making decisions by themselves, and I always hope the staff, and the senior staff in particular, didn't feel isolated. They felt supported by the trustees. And we came through it fantastically well. I mean, I know some people may have lost their jobs during that period, and we may have had to close down certain parts of the organisation, which were decisions that we had to take. But the organisation is still here and strong and ready to go again. And not everybody can say that about the COVID period in particular. So, sometimes you have to make tough decisions as leaders. But again, if you make those prayerfully and carefully, then generally speaking, you'll come through the other side.
So, having said all that, why did you leave? Why did you resign?
Oh, it was shocking, So, and again, I mean, some may understand this, some may not, and it is partly, it's a faith-driven reason, is that as I got baptised in 2017, I've been more involved in my church for quite a while now, and I just had this sense I wanted to be more involved in my church. And I'm saying to God, well, find me the time. When can I find the time? You know how busy I am. I run my own company. I'm very, very busy. I travel a lot, and I've always felt sometimes I wasn't giving enough time to the YMCA that I'd like to have given more if I could. And God just said to me, you need to put something down to pick something up. And he told me in prayer that now the time would come for me to step down from YMCA and step into more involvement in my own church. Well, I'm not going to argue with the boss. So I'd made, and we talked about it. We had a long run up to it, so it wasn't something that was going to be sudden. We talked about it quite a long time ago, and we agreed I'd stay a bit longer to get us through a couple of things that we needed to get through, and then eventually I said, okay, well, the time is right now. And what we need to know is that on the last Thursday, when I stepped down from YMCA, I stepped onto the church board on Monday, 5 days later. So God's timing is perfect. It was literally finish
from
one
to the
and
other.
Start the next. So it's purely a faith-driven decision, but one that I knew in my heart was right, and it's now for somebody else to take the organisation to the next stage, in whatever that route would be. But, and this might sound a bit cheesy, and people are listening, they might think, oh yeah, you would say that, but it's still in my heart. YMCA Heart of England, and I hope to still be involved, maybe come to the annual celebration. I'd love to see through some of the things that are, or not see through, but see the end result of some of the things that we've already started. There's some
definitely
exciting,
be inviting you to some
good, I hope so, because there's some exciting things potentially on the horizon. It's a bit like we can emerge back out of COVID now and start to look forward rather than thinking how do we keep things going. So that's the reason I stepped down, purely so I could spend more time involved in my church.
Okay, brilliant. Paul, just want to say thank you so much for the time that you've been chair, but also steering us as trustees, and to just say thank you for being you, because what comes across is someone who's genuine, someone who's full of integrity, a God-fearing man, but has got wonderful skills and abilities, and that time that you spent on the board has helped us to be where we are now. So from us, myself as CEO, from the executive team, from the staff and others, we want to say thank you for the time that you've spent, the time that you've given up voluntary, hasn't gone in vain. It's
Yeah.
really meant a lot to
Well,
many
thank
of
you,
us.
Pauline. And I think, I was very touched with what some of the trustees said last week, and I'm very touched by that. But I need to return the thanks, obviously, to you, but also to the team.
Yeah.
We've been through a very difficult period, and there are people in the organisation that I've probably not even met that have come in every day, they've worked hard. Those are the heroes. Being a leader of a chair of an organisation is almost the least important job. It's the people that have been cleaning the rooms, and maintaining the properties and getting up every day and supporting our young people. Those are the heroes. Those are the ones that need the genuine thanks. And so from my thanks to the organisation and all those individuals who've worked so hard, tirelessly at times, to help the people that we serve. And that's what it's always been about for me. It's not about me or trustees or you as the chief executive. It's about the young people that we serve, and therefore the people who are helping those people, to me, are the heroes. So thank you to all of those as well, and for the privilege of leading an organisation for, I think it's about 5 years as chair, but a long time as a trustee.